and she sees as 4 new people are being crucified. This is a real snake that was on set. Now the Chosen is taking this and interpreting it as... Welcome to the Snipe Life, where we look at creativity through the lens of Christianity. My name is Brandon. Welcome to the Snipe Life. We break down the Chosen. We talk about Christian subjects. If you're new here, please subscribe, like, all the stuff. We'd really love to have you as part of the family. Well, we're talking about the Chosen Season 3, Episode 6 today. There's so much to break down. New subscriber right there. Thank you so much. But we're going to be talking specifically about Pilate. We get Pilate in this episode and his wife, who of course is having dreams about Jesus, but why is she having them theoretically years before the crucifixion? What is kind of happening here? I don't know. I guess we're going to talk about all of that today. So let's dig in. Let's talk about this episode, and you guys let me know how you're doing it in the comments down below. Here we go. So this episode starts off with a really interesting part. So let's jump into that and see how it's going. Very mysterious. This is shot in the new studio, the gigantic new sound stage that they have. Now here we see some different faces. Let's see if we can pick out who they are. So first off, we have this face. And by the outline of the face, it looks like Thaddeus. And it looks like Thaddeus to me. And then here we get, I think this is either Nathaniel. Yeah, it looks like Nathaniel to me. It might be Little James. Looks like Nathaniel. And then we get a definite view of Simon here. Or Philip first and then Simon. And the snake. Now this is a real snake that was on set for this for the shooting. This is like a dream sequence. So it's like a very artistic sort of like wibbly wobbly sort of thing, right? But this is a real snake that was on set. We have a ton of behind the scenes photos of the actors and actresses and the crew taking pictures with this snake. It's kind of interesting. And Jelaine said it was the first snake she's ever seen in person, which is crazy. We've got Simon. Thank you so much for that subscriber. And then finally, we have Jesus. Now, if you look behind him there, we actually see, like it's dark, right? But if you look really closely, you can actually see some forest there, kind of showing that he's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's pounding on the ground. He's very intense, right? Here, if you look at that background, I know it's probably pretty dark on the stream, but you can actually see forest back there. We see Jesus, and waking up is Claudia, who is the wife of Pilate. Now, this is really interesting because we know from Matthew 27, if we jump into some scripture, like we always love to do, Matthew 27, verse 19, while Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, he was about to judge Jesus and basically sentence him to be crucified while offering it to them to say what they want. He got a message from his wife, and his wife's message says, "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." Now, in scripture, we only see this say that she suffered a great deal today in a dream about him, in a dream because of him. So we don't know if that dream was an ongoing thing. Now, the Chosen is taking this and interpreting it as saying, saying basically like she had these dreams all the time, or she had them for like a long time before Jesus' actual crucifixion. So I don't know if that's like a proper interpretation. I don't think it matters that much for the show. I think it adds a lot to the storyline of the show, and I think that that's great. And so it kind of gives you this buildup of maybe she is having these recurring dreams over and over again over the course of months or years, that it would allow her to have even more urgency to say, hey, don't kill this guy, don't crucify him, and kind of really, really be intentional about that. Now, the rest of the scene here, we see as the disciples are asleep in these tents, and that is just a showing of the Garden of the Gethsemane. That's what actually happened in the garden, right? All of the disciples were asleep, and Jesus is actually upset that they fell asleep, right? So we see Jesus here. They're all asleep, and he's turned around. Again, this isn't actually what's going to be happening. This isn't like a future version of what we're going to see later in the show. It's just a dream that she is having here. Now we see her wake up, and she immediately gets kind of like fully dressed and has like a shawl over her shoulders. And then she goes outside, and she sees as 4 new people are being crucified. This would have been a like pretty normal thing for Romans, like in this area, right? Well, we see the 3 that are up on the crosses, and then over to the left, we actually see another one that's being put up right now. And so here, this would have been a pretty common thing. And now we see her looking out into the distance. This is obviously a very big area, a very big city. This is probably way closer to the coast. I wonder if this is Caesarea Maritima or somewhere near there. Pilate, I know, stayed like near the coast. That's where his big palace was and stuff. Or this could be in Jerusalem. Also, this could be Jerusalem, but I'm not 100% sure. It's kind of hard to tell by the topography of the area. But yeah, we see these people being crucified. She's kind of disgusted by it, and she's not sure exactly how to deal with it, but turns out that these are actually zealots, not any zealots that we know, at least not that I'm aware of, but she sees her husband here.
4 more.
Pontius Pilate.
So early in the morning.
Now, we've talked about this a little bit so far, but Pontius Pilate in The Chosen is actually very young. He looks like he's probably in his 20s, maybe very early 30s. Yeah, really interesting that they went with that. Now, we don't know from history or from scripture how old Pilate was. We don't know at all. All we know is that he was a ruler from this time to this time. I believe 26 AD to 36 AD is when he ruled in this area of like Israel, Judea. But we don't know much other than that. We know that he was a pretty ruthless and cruel leader. He did kill a lot of people. And so that's kind of the gist that we get from him from history. And so The Chosen is kind of showing that in a new light, maybe a more naive, younger version of Pilate, that's why he acted in the way that he did, and kind of, justifying his actions a little bit more, showing that he wasn't exactly sure what he was doing, or he was trying to figure out the correct way to do things. But he is the governor of Judea here.
What time of day is an ideal time to die? I'm a governor, not a philosopher.
It's excessive. The people already resent you, and Tiberius will be loath to hear of another insurrection.
Now, this is incredibly important. We're going to talk about this a little bit more as we go through the sections with Pilate specifically. When we talk about insurrections and people rising up against the Roman Empire, this happened quite a few times. In fact, after Jesus dies, it's going to happen again pretty quickly. I believe in 70 AD, there's a huge insurrection that happens. But there's been little ones that have popped up all over the place that Pilate has had to either quell or do these different things. But a lot of these are happening because Pilate is so aggressive, because he's killing people, because he's kind of cruel. And so because of that, actually the Roman emperor, Tiberius, the big dog, right? He is actually upset at Pilate for doing what he's doing, and he doesn't want this to continue. This actually is the reason that Pilate gets taken out of his position later on in life. So, I guess if this is 32 AD, I think we're in right now. Or no, sorry. This would be 27. So he's just started his rule, because at the beginning of The Chosen, we were in 26 AD, and we just had the new year, which would be 27 AD, I guess. And so he just began his rule, if he began his rule in 26. So, no, Tiberius would not know about Jesus. They wouldn't really know about anything that's going on in this area. Not even really Pontius Pilate knows about Jesus until after he talks to Atticus later in this episode, right? He would have heard things around, obviously, as Jesus is making more and more of an impact, feeding 5,000 people, et cetera, et cetera. But here we see Pilate before all of that, and we see his cruelty, but we also see his We also see the air here from his wife, even of, hey, you need to be careful because Tiberius has already yelled at you for being too cruel, like too harsh once already. So you need to be careful with that. And this is eventually what gets Pilate fired from his position overall later down the line.
4 convicted revolutionaries. Jewish zealots, darling.
So there's the zealots
Leave
there.
the governing to me. Go back to bed.
I haven't been sleeping well.
Go pick some flowers.
So she hasn't been sleeping well. We don't know if this is the first dream she's had or if she's had several dreams over time. I'm not sure.
And where are you going?
I have a date.
Oh.
An old friend.
You don't have friends.
I do so.
You have valuable contacts.
Again, this interaction with his wife, the interaction with Atticus later on, it's not about his wife and it's not about Atticus. The show is trying to build up Pilate to show you who this guy is and what is his motive. What is he trying to do, right? And so as we look at that, we have to understand we're learning about Pilate. We're trying to get more of an insight into who he is. So she says, you don't have friends. You have valuable acquaintances, valuable contacts, right? And so that shows us that Pilate is really concerned about power and how he keeps that power and who he has around him that he can use to get more power, right?
People whom you find useful. Strategic acquaintances.
Maybe you should be governor.
And there's the snake. So even Dallas said during the after show that his wife doesn't know what's going on with her dreams. She doesn't have a full grasp of kind of what's going on, but there's obviously little hints that she's starting to understand a little bit more, or at least she's seeing, hey, there's maybe something to this. If I'm having these dreams about this and the snake is here and my husband's wearing a snake and all these different things, maybe there's something to this. So we see that scene between Pilate and his wife, and then later on we see another scene here with Atticus and Pilate as we get to learn a little bit more about them. Now, somehow they're friends, and I'm not exactly sure how this works in the narrative, but it seems as if they've known each other for a while, but they haven't seen each other for a year. And so Atticus is coming here essentially to tell him what's going on in Capernaum, what's going on in the surrounding area, and how things are going. Now here, Pilate is kind of messing with Atticus. He brings these guards out and sets up this tent, and kind of as a show of power, but also as a show of, like, I don't really care.
Did I do it?
Do what? Announce your position to any opportunist that happens by?
So he says, did I do it? And Atticus immediately goes to strategy. Because remember, he's a soldier. He's like an undercover cop, essentially, right? He's like, did I do it? And Atticus goes, what? Announce your position to anyone that may be passing by? Like, this is a dangerous thing for Pilate to do. Anybody could come and try to assassinate him here, right? That's what Atticus is thinking. And Pilate's kind of happy about that because he wants to irritate Atticus as a friendly kind of jab.
I wondered, how can I annoy a red-bottomed old man? All it took were 6 men in this stupid tent.
And again, this shows how the Chosen is deciding to portray Pilate, because he is way more of a like carefree, like young, invincible feeling sort of person, right? Than we're normally used to seeing him. Normally, we're used to seeing him this old, kind of like stern, very cruel and like cold person. But here we're seeing this more flamboyant, sort of like showy, very young personality of a person. It's very different.
Man, what can I say? Well done.
You know how easy I am to amuse.
No, you are definitely not easily amused. I'm surprised there's no wine and women.
I don't drink wine for the effect, and I'm married, so there. But I admit, I was reading Miles Gloriosus by Plautus. Do you know it? It's hilarious.
But the,
And then we see more of their friendship kind of coming out here. And Atticus here even takes a small jab at Pilate. Now here is a very interesting moment. Why do they clue in on Atticus washing his hands? Is it really that important? I think this is a foreshadowing moment. This is a foreshadowing of Atticus, of Pilate later on. Remember what Pilate does when he meets Jesus? He washes his hands of the situation. Physically, he washes his hands, right? He says, I want no part of this. It's going to be your choice what happens here, as he says to the Jews and the Jewish leaders. So I wonder if this is a foreshadowing of that moment specifically. Otherwise, I don't know why they would intentionally focus on it so much.
Glorious, swaggering, braggart soldier.
Yes.
What are you saying?
Here, Atticus is kind of messing with him. Pilate was reading a story about a braggadocious soldier, and Atticus is saying, are you saying that's me? And Pilate kind of like stops for a second. He's worried that he actually did offend Atticus, and that wasn't his intention. So I wonder what the relationship actually is here, because Dallas kind of described it as an Obi-Wan like connection, to where he's almost a mentor to Pilate, which seems kind of weird. The whole Chosen's version of the Cohorte Urbanae in general is very strange. I don't think they would have operated in the way that we see here. But having a Cohorte Urbanae that would be a mentor to someone like a governor is really strange to me as well, just in the Roman system. I like the storyline, but historically I think it's kind of a little bit off. I'm not a historian, so maybe I'm just completely off, but I'd love some more explanation on that if anybody could clarify in the comments for sure.
I had you.
You did not.
I did.
Yes, you did. Why are you charming? Haven't you been undercover for a year? It's been a year since I've seen you.
I've had a foil the last few months.
Oh, some prostitute into capitalist?
Far less charming, I'm afraid. The praetor of Upper Galilee. Oh, he slips occasionally and claims the whole of Israel.
So they're talking about Quintus. So sometimes Quintus will slip up and he'll claim the whole of Israel instead of just Capernaum. And again, that shows his aspirations to who Quintus wants to be. He probably wants Pilate's job as governor, right?
I'll kill him. Wait.
And immediately the first thing Pilate says is, oh, I'll just kill him then. This is what Pilate's normal response would have been. If he needed someone out of the way, he would have just killed them.
Galilee does well.
Yeah, don't kill him.
And then he says, wait, Galilee does well. Yeah, don't kill him. So they're seeing Quintus's value, but if he wasn't valuable, this probably would have had a different outcome.
Let me think. His name is Quintus. Revenues are strong. He was reprimanded for use of force after putting down an uprising last year.
That's him, and he'd be all too honored by your recital. He's the kind of man that wants to be remembered.
We are very different, then. See, my problem with his reprimand is that I have been reprimanded for my use of force.
And again, it comes back to the reason why he's eventually fired from his position, because his use of force. That's what he's been told by the emperor himself not to do. And so if Quintus is doing that, it's going to look bad on Pilate. So he wants to stop Quintus from showing that extra piece of force. Now, we saw earlier in this episode that Quintus actually for a second thought about having Gaius kill Jesus in front of everybody. But then he thought about it again, and he knew that his higher-ups wouldn't like that. This is why. Because Pilate doesn't want them to have a big show of force. He wants to have that big show of force so that he seems powerful and that he's controlling everything. But if everybody else in his area is doing that, then they're going to think that Israel is run by a chaos dictator, crazy person, and they're going to get rid of him in the Roman Empire because they want things to be sustainable. They want to take over places and then build them up into the Roman Empire. And they can't have this overshow of force that's happening.
So if word spreads that everyone in Israel is heavy-handed, then I have to be even less forceful. How is the repartee?
I tormented him.
That line right there, I don't really point out like actor moments a lot, but this line right here is done really, really well.
How is the repartee?
Just that moment from him, it's very like, it reminds me so much of like a Roman aristocrat, you know?
Tormented him. For you, Governor.
Just for me. I don't believe you, but thank you. What I really want to know is what landed you in Capernaum? From the top. Please, I've got all afternoon for this.
Really?
No, about 10 more minutes.
I'll be fast.
And you can see they're just kind of ribbing each other back and forth. They're showing, you know, their friendship, which is really interesting to me. And this Obi-Wan like relationship, you know, between them is fascinating to me, because I never would have guessed that's how this would have gone. I thought that Pilate was going to be really stern and like harsh. Definitely was not expecting that. Continue on here.
The peaceful preacher.
Peaceful. Grows by the day.
In hopes of seeing the peaceful preacher.
Peaceful. And magnetic. I think Quintus is out of his depth.
They say this is a backwater, you know. Bad assignment.
This was a common theory during that time that they thought whoever led this area, you know, like they would have been told like, hey, this is basically like a punishment for you. And Quintus, remember, he said basically the same thing, I think, in earlier seasons. I can't remember exactly where. If anybody can remember where that was, but I'm pretty sure Quintus said something similar.
Punishment, even.
I guess we're sharing the same cell then.
I'm content. I don't want to rule over a warring nation in important times.
No, Mary is not suspecting Judas's thievery. We're going to talk about that scene, and there's something extremely important that happens, foreshadowing there as well. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
I like the sea. I like the people. They're poetic and complicated.
Now, this is an important line that Pilate has here. He says, I love the sea. I love the people. You know, they're whatever and complicated. Poetic and complicated. So when he says, I love the sea, like I said earlier, he had a palace by the sea. I believe he had a palace in Caesarea Maritima, where he stayed, and it was right on the coast, right on the Mediterranean there. And so if you go to Israel with us next year, I believe we'll go there. So you can check it out with us and see where Pilate actually stayed and what he was actually ruling over there. Yeah.
Except Caiaphas. Horrible. Horrible man.
I love that line. Except for Caiaphas. Horrible man. Caiaphas being the high priest, him and Pilate would have butted heads all the time. Pilate, he honestly made the Jews worship the emperor in a lot of ways. And so Caiaphas would have been butting heads trying to keep that Judaism there, and Pilate would have been pushing back, pushing even more Roman kind of infrastructure over his head over and over and over again, making this like a really harsh duel that would have been all the time fighting, for sure.
Now, for a moment there, you almost sounded like a holy man yourself.
I wish.
That's weird. He says, I wish to that. He says, you almost sounded like a holy man yourself. And he says, I wish. I wonder if that's like a hint towards like, I wanted to do something else. I wanted to be a different part of society, not this. Because Dallas said during the after show that this is almost like his dad pushed him into this position sort of character.
I see 10 cubits in front of my face most days. I just want peace. I want the people to get what they want. For Rome to be sated.
Sometimes peace takes a war.
I do thank you for the intelligence, Atticus.
Let me back up for a second. I think that might have been another musical cue. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Peace takes a war.
I wonder if that's another musical theme that we may see for the Romans specifically. Now, the writers of the music of the show often will make musical themes. We pointed this out a little while ago with Judas's new theme that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I pointed it out in a video a little while ago, and it turns out that the writers actually confirmed that I was right about that musical theme for Judas. So I'm always on the lookout for these different musical themes. Another one that we see in this episode in particular is the one from Simon the Zealot, which is the da 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 da, that thing that's from episode 4 of season 2. And so we see these musical themes kind of throughout the Chosen overall. And I think we're going to see more of them as we continue to kind of flesh out who these characters are and what's going on with that.
I do thank you for the intelligence, Atticus. And I trust you. If the peace...
You have to understand, so D-Day says that Common is confusing wanting peace and then crucifying so many people. He doesn't want peace for the Jewish people. He doesn't necessarily want peace for the people that he's ruling over. He wants peace for Rome, which includes those people once they're assimilated into Rome. So he wants them to stop making trouble, and he wants them to stop doing what they're doing and become Romans, so that the people of Rome can be satiated. So it's not that he really cares about these Jewish people, that he loves them. He loves the Roman people. He loves the people who are going to be part of his, domain, in a sense. At least that's the way that I think about it. So. Any news on episodes 7 and 8? Episodes 7 and 8 are coming out in theaters, so we were right about that, but only for 2 days, and then the episodes are going to come out after that. So February 2nd and 3rd, they're going to be in theaters. Then February 5th, it'll come out on the app. And yeah, I don't know what. I'll be in Israel during that time, but we'll talk about that another time. So.
Peaceful preacher or his movement ever becomes something I need to know about, I will need your counsel, and I will listen.
So this is big.
Unlike Quintus, I understand your interest.
So this brings up two things for me. He says, when that time comes, I will need your counsel. So when that hard time comes, when I have to make decisions about things, this is obviously a foreshadowing about Jesus later on, but Atticus obviously isn't a part of that decision directly. So maybe he's getting counsel from Atticus on how to deal with that situation. Again, he's supposed to be like this Obi-Wan like figure, almost mentoring Pilate, which is a really interesting take on this. The second thing that it brings up for me is, why did I just forget it? Oh, Atticus's interests. So he says, unlike Quintus, I know what your interests are. So we don't really truly know what Atticus's motives are for doing what he's doing. Why is he here? Why is he seeking out all of these things? I think we're missing some of that altogether. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out.
Until then, learn all you can.
So he's telling him, dig in deep, learn all you can from the situation.
Take care of yourself, Atticus.
I will see you soon. Governor Pilate.
Really, really, really interesting, right? Yeah, man. I really like the Pilate character. What do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about him as a character that we've seen in this episode? I really like him. I really like the way that he's portrayed. Him and Atticus' relationship, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that and see where that comes from. Like, did he know him as a kid and like helped him train or something? Did he know him as a cohorte urbanae back in Rome? I don't know. I don't know what that kind of brings in, but yeah, a lot of people seem to be liking this younger type of person playing Pilate there. So I'm really interested. We'll see where that goes. Hey, if you like this short part of our live stream, you can check out the full 5-hour live stream over on our Patreon at patreon.com/thesnipelife. This is literally the best way that you can help to support our ministry, and it really means a ton to us. You can contact us anytime through the chat on there, and you too could be like these amazing people that just joined our Patreon over the last few weeks. Thank you so much to all you amazing, amazing people, and thank you for supporting our ministry and what God has asked us to do.